Hi, this video is looking at the language question for the EDUQAS GCSE English language. It can be used for AQA2, both have language questions. This could be question 2, 3 or 4 of the GCSE English language paper 1. The question we're looking at is a question that comes up quite a lot in the exam. It's how does the writer make these lines tense and dramatic? And I'm doing it based on an extract from the first chapter of Jaws. So example of how questions, have a read yourself. I put the top one in red just because this is the one we're doing, but also it's a very common one. So if you were revising for your exams, I would say it's a very good chance of something like this coming up. So comments from the November exam. So the examiner comments publishes a report which basically says things the students did well, not so well in the exam. So this is the feedback for this exam. There was too much time spent on low mark questions. They think students need a lot more quotes. An actual quote from the examining report says, plenty of quotes give students high marks. So it's a really good tip. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. More quotes needed across the whole text. So for example, some students may just do it from maybe the start of the extract, and then you have to make sure you do it from the start, middle and end. Also, we had far too much feature spotting. This means students will spot a simile and they will say something like, this simile makes it more interesting for the reader. So you're not going to get any marks for just saying that's a simile. I wouldn't even really talk about similes and metaphors and alliteration too much, but if you wanted to, you got to say the effect that using that technique has on the reader. And the main thing the examiner says is you need to focus on content and language. So basically, what's in the extract, what words the language have used, and then recognising the impact of particular words and phrases. So what are we not going to do? So this is my class. So what we're not going to do, so if you look at this image of Sideshow Bob, we're not going to make the same mistake. So if you never passed the GCSE before, we've never got a grade 4 or a C, we're not going to repeat the same mistakes. We're not going to go in and do exactly what we did in the last exam. We're going to look at what the examiner says and what we've said together as a group, and then what are we going to do to change it. So what is the plan? So what are we going to do to make sure we don't do exactly the same mistakes? So from now on, we are going to pick 8 to 10 quotes per question. So if it's a 10-mark question, I want us to pick 8 to 10 quotes from the text. Take quotes from the beginning, middle and end of the extract. No PEs more than 3 lines on an A4 page. So the main thing you need to get away from is doing a 10-mark question and basically doing 2 massive PEs on 2 quotes. That's not going to get you the high marks. Where we want to get the high marks is do a couple of lines on 8 to 10 quotes saying why you've chosen it, in this case, why the quote is dramatic or exciting, and what the writer done to make it that way. Explain how your quote links to the exam question, and don't mention to me. So again, this is just my opinion, so your teachers might want you to do this, but my theory is to get a grade 5 or grade 6, you don't really need to do it. You just need to look at the words and say why they've been used. And why do we want a lot of quotes? Well, if I show you 2, these are real student answers from a different exam, but if I show you this, they're basically the same length, and in a way, the explanations and analysis are pretty similar as well. They're both reasonably strong. However, the one on the left only used 4 quotes, and it got 3 out of 10. The one on the right used 11 quotes, and it got 9 out of 10 marks. So if you need to look at anything in this video, look at this. As many quotes as you can in that 13 minutes, as many quotes as you can from the beginning, middle and end of the extract, and it's really going to get you the high marks. Really, really going to help you. If you want a bit more in detail, you can read these. Well, actually, you can't read them because they're a different exam. But just to show you again, this one got 2 out of 10 marks, but only 2 quotes, not enough. This one got 5 out of 10, only 4 quotes, not enough, but still not a bad answer. But again, the point I'm hammering home is this one got 8 out of 10, and it's got 9 quotes. So if you are same standard as maybe one of your friends in the class, same standard of English, and they use 2 quotes and you use 8 quotes, you're going to get a much better mark than them. So this is the question we're looking at. Read lines 10 to 40. Okay, how does the writer make these lines tense and dramatic? Talk about how it's what happens in the lines and how it's tense and dramatic. So remember, this is a language question, it's a how question, so it could actually be a 5-mark question or a 10-mark question. If it's a 10-mark question, you're looking at 8 to 10 quotes in 13 minutes. If it's a 5-mark question, you're looking at 4 to 6 quotes and 5 to 6 minutes. So coverage, this means, so examiners always talk about this, coverage, they didn't have enough coverage. And coverage means using quotes from all parts of the selected lines. So for example, in our extract here, I extracted the whole of this extract. If you just did, I've highlighted where I've used quotes. If you just used quotes from this area, you're not going to do that well because you've not covered the whole text. The question is about lines 10 to 40, and if you've only done lines 10 to 25 and you've forgotten to do the last bit, or you haven't got to the last bit, you're not going to be able to talk about the whole thing. So what we're looking for, we're not looking for that. We're sort of looking for this. And it doesn't matter, you don't need as many quotes as this. I know I've done a lot of quotes, but the idea is the same. So please make sure that you do quotes from all parts of the extract. And also do your answers from top to bottom as well. So what I mean by this is, so for example here, the first quote I've highlighted is near the house. That would be your first answer to talk about. And the last line, a few spectators there to see them off. That would be your last point you're going to talk about. Don't jumble around, try to keep it in order. So the question is, read lines 10 to 40. Again, this is based on an extract from the first chapter of Jaws, and I will actually put a link to the opening scene from Jaws that it's based on. Well, not based on, that the film used the book from. So the question is, read lines 10 to 40. How does the writer make these lines tense and dramatic? It's worth 10 marks. You should write about what happens in these lines to build excitement. The writer's use of language to create excitement and drama. The effects on the reader. You must refer to the text to support your answer using relevant subject terminology where appropriate. However, big tip for me would be not to talk about adjectives and verbs. You can talk about adjectives and verbs a little bit for sure, but I wouldn't bother with metaphors and stuff like that. If you're looking to get grade 5 or 6, pick 8, 9 quotes and talk about them. So we're going to look for words that make the writing tense and dramatic. Yeah, so words or language that make us feel these emotions. Okay, so I'll read it through. If you want to pause it because you've had enough of me talking, that's fine. And remember, as I'm reading it through, look for 8 or 10 quotes that make the writing tense and dramatic. Okay. The great beast recognised its prey. The fish closed on the woman and hurtled past, 12 feet to the side and 6 feet below the surface. The woman felt only a wave of pressure that seemed to lift her up in the water and ease her down again. She stopped swimming and held her breath. Feeling nothing further, she resumed her exhausted stroke. The fish smelled her now, and the vibrations, erratic and sharp, signalled distress. The fish began to circle close to the surface. Its gigantic fin broke water, and its tail, thrashing back and forth, cut the glassy surface with a hiss. A series of tremors shook its body. For the first time, the woman felt fear, though she did not know why. Adrenaline shot through her trunk and her limbs, generating a tingling heat and urging her to swim faster. She guessed that she was 50 yards from shore. She could see the line of white foam where the waves broke on the beach. She saw the lights in the house, and for a comforting moment she thought she saw someone pass by one of the windows. The fish was about 40 feet from the woman off to the side when it turned suddenly to the left. Dropped entirely below the surface and with 2 quick thrusts of its tail was upon her. At first the woman thought she'd snagged a leg on a rock or a piece of floating wood. There was no initial pain, only one violent tug on her right leg. She reached down to touch her foot, treading water with her left leg to keep her head up, feeling in the blackness with her left hand. She could not find her foot. She reached higher on her leg, and when she was overcome by a rush of nausea and dizziness, her groping fingers had found a hub of bone and tattered flesh. She knew that the warm pulsing flow over her fingers in the chill water was her own blood. Pain and panic struck together. The woman threw her head back and screamed a growling cry of terror. The fish had moved away. It swallowed the woman's limbs without chewing. So pause the video and highlight anything, or in your head just write out 8 or 10 quotes that rate the writing tense and dramatic. So, example straight away, I would use the first sentence, the great beast recognised its prey. That would be one quote that I would be talking about. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, so these are the quotes I've highlighted, and I'll tell you why I've highlighted them. So the great beast recognised its prey. Almost makes the shark sound like a monster. Yeah, the word, it could have said the great fish or the great shark. Monster makes it sound like an ogre, something really horrible. Recognised its prey again. prey is an interesting word, isn't it? It's not said the woman. Prey is almost something that the shark is going to hunt. A dozen feet to the side. So the shark is getting very close to the unaware woman. She can't defend herself. She doesn't know the shark's there. Is the shark getting a look before attacking? So the shark doesn't go straight forward. It's almost like the shark is sort of working out what it's going to do. She resumed her exhausted stroke. Okay, so that's exciting and dramatic just because the woman's tired. She's not going to be able to fight the shark off. The fish smelled her now. So now it's a bad sign. The attack is coming. She can't get away. The shark is described as erratic, which basically means unpredictable, volatile. It's gigantic thin, so that's telling the reader that the shark is enormous, an absolutely huge fish. Thrashing shows that it's a powerful shark. Cut the glassy surface. Okay, so that's an interesting quote. You can talk about that almost like the image of like a breaking glass breaking a mirror. And urging her to swim faster. So this is it's exciting for the reader because it's almost a race against time. She knows something bad is going to happen. 50 yards from shore. So this tells the reader she is near the beach. She is near the home. Maybe there is a chance she could get back. However, we may be told again as readers this might not be happening as too quick thrust of its tail was upon her, so it shows the speed of the shark. Snagged her leg on a rock or a piece of floating wood. So this shows that the shark is quiet. She doesn't know the shark's there. She can't see it. Also, she's a little bit naive. We feel maybe sorry for her because she thinks she's just done something pretty innocent, but in fact it's the shark that's got her. Feeling in the blackness. So this makes it tense and exciting because she can't. If you think of a horror films usually take place in the dark, isn't it? If you can't see it, it's more tense. But also she can't see the shark, so she can't defend herself. She could not find her. It's a really short sentence used for effect, very matter of fact, but it's also a really awful image that we could imagine being there as readers. Hub of bone and tattered flesh. So tattered basically means that it was torn into pieces. Warm pulsing flow over her fingers. So warm mixed with cold is almost like an eerie feeling. The woman threw her head back and screamed a growling cry of terror. So again, look at the words, look at the verbs used. Screamed, cry. Basically shows she's in agony and she's frightened. And the last one is swallowed the woman's limbs without chewing. So this just shows that it's obviously a massive fish for a start, but they can eat a limb without even chewing. But it also shows straight away that it's quite an easy thing to do. It's not like the shark was struggling to bite her. It was just literally just one bite in it, her arm or her leg. So there you go. So remember, you'd only need 8 to 10 quotes. I've done loads of quotes here. So what I would do here is if you had time in the exam and you'd highlighted all these quotes, I would then basically pick my best 8 or 9 and make sure I have some from the beginning, middle and end of the extract. So how are we going to write our answer? So you're going to use a quote and say why it makes it scary and dramatic. 1 or 2 sentences per quote. No waffle along PE. So to be perfectly honest, if you're talking about a quote for 7 or 8 lines, you're basically just repeating your point. So what we want is 8 to 10 points or quotes of a couple of sentences, not 2 huge PEs. So let's look at a couple in detail. So first one, the text is made dramatic straight away by calling the shark a beast. This makes it dangerous and monstrous. So what I've done is I zoomed in on the word beast, and this is the image I'm getting. The writer, like I said, could have used the word fish, could have used the word shark. They've decided, or he, because his name's Peter Benchley, he's decided to use the word beast. Okay, what do we link with that? What are the connotations? Earlier on I said the connotations of thump were violence, aggression. Well, the connotations of beast are someone who's a monster, someone who's dangerous. Yeah, so this student gives a quote and explains why it makes the writing tense and dramatic. They've linked the word beast to a size, as in the shark is huge, a violence, and like almost the shark being monstrous. Beast makes it sound more dangerous than fish, like I've said. If it was said the fish would have gone down, we almost think of a fish as being a small thing, don't we? The fact it was called a beast, it's almost like this huge monster's coming to get her. Another one, feeling in the blackness. This quote makes it tense as she can't see the shark. It may attack her from any direction. Yeah, so again, it's a pretty simple point. Blackness is already like a scary thing. We don't see what's going on in the dark. Yeah, so again, the student gives a quote and explains why it's tense and dramatic. They link the word blackness to the character not being able to see the shark. If she can't see the shark, she can't get away from it. Okay, its fin is called gigantic, which reminds the reader of its normal size. So all the way through, you can make a point that the writer is referring to the size of the shark. And to be honest, the main thing about Jaws, the shark, is that it's huge. So really simple point, but I've just picked out, I'm showing the examiner I can pick out words and phrases. So I've picked out the word gigantic and say why does it make it tense and scary? Again, if the shark would have been a tiny shark, it's not particularly scary. The fact that it's scary is because this shark is gigantic, it's huge. Yeah, so say why it's tense and dramatic. They link the word gigantic to the shark being a normal size. This makes it more scary than a smaller average size shark. Okay, so let's look at the points together. I've said that one, so I'll just read them out now. We are told the woman is exhausted. The fact she is tired suggests she will not have the energy to fight. The fish smelled her now suggests the shark is narrowing in on her and will attack soon. Its fin is called gigantic, which reminds the reader of its normal size. It makes it tense when she knows to swim faster. She knows something is wrong and needs to go back. 50 yards from shore shows the reader she's near home. The reader thinks she still has a chance to survive. However, too quick thrust upon her shows the reader she is no match for the shark's power. So see how I've done it in order, and because I've done it in order of the text, it means I can use words however. So I've almost, this 50 yards from shore one, I've set the quote up there saying she might get away, but then I've said, oh, however, the writer tells us straight afterwards that she won't get away. So that's a good way of linking the two together. So if we look into that quote, too quick thrusts, I've zoomed in on the word thrusts, I've zoomed in on the word quick, and this shows that, yeah, a silly too quick thrust, and then the shark is right there. So it shows the shark's speed and power. Feeling the blacklist makes it tense as she can't see the shark. It may attack her from any direction. Last couple. The writer makes it dramatic with couldn't find her foot. This is normal injured, which leaves the reader shocked. Tattered flesh. I've zoomed into the word tattered. This makes it seem like her legs have been torn to pieces. Finally, so I'm turning the examiner, I'm to the end of the extract. Finally, it ends with a scream and a cry in terror. This shows the reader she's in agony and scared. The reader also knows the attack is not over. So she's crying for help, but we know that there's no one to help her. So there they are in detail. So how many quotes have I got here? I've got 11 quotes. I've got 11 quotes, okay? And it might seem a lot. However, by the time you get into the exam, if you get into this habit, the hardest two things in this question are picking out the quotes, okay? And the only advice I would give you that for is just do anything that stands out. Almost every couple of lines, highlight something that stands out about the question. And then look what I'm doing. First of all, the quotes are in order. Yeah. Phrases like straight away and finally show the examiner I'm doing it in order. No points more than 3 lines on the page. Most of them are at 2 lines. And all the way through I comment on why it's tense and why it's scary. I haven't waffled, I've not started talking about onomatopoeia or anything like that. I've just picked a quote and said why the writer has used it, why the writer makes it tense and dramatic. So for example, the writer could have used the word fish, however I've picked up the word beast and say why the writer's used that. So again, why do we want to use a lot of quotes? Yeah, okay, it's 2 similar answers. The one on the left, 4 quotes, got 3 out of 10 because it's not enough quotes. The one on the right, 11 quotes, 9 out of 10. Again, these students are quite similar standard, but just because the one on the right has used loads of quotes, his mark or her mark is much better. So remember, overview of the question, explain why you picked the quote and what the words mean for the reader. Use as many example quotes as possible in 13 minutes. And remember, from now on, pick 8 to 10 quotes per question. Take quotes in the beginning, middle and end of the extract. No PEs more than 3 lines or 2 lines on an A4 page. Explain how your quote links to the exam question. Don't waffle and try not to mention similes, alliteration, unless you've got an amazing point about it. Main thing is though, 8 to 10 quotes, quote them all over the extract and no massive PE, it's just 2 lines or 3 lines.